Roger Federer founded the Laver Cup 5 years ago, so it was only fitting that he would retire from tennis at this same exhibition in 2022. Over the previous 36 months, he'd struggled with a serious knee injury and undergone 3 operations. Many have asked what it is like to work with this iconic superstar. And that also got us wondering which would be the most memorable moments of his illustrious career. Stay with us as we answer these questions and more. First up, what was it like to work with Federer? Federer made a rather timid return to tennis in 2021. He played a few tournaments and stopped again after he lost to Hurkacz at Wimbledon. He wanted one last run on the Church Road lawns in 2023, but his knee wouldn't allow that, and being the pragmatist he is, he called it a day. It was during this summer that the 20-time Grand Slam champ began to understand that he wouldn't be able to return to top-level tennis, and began to work on the announcement of his retirement. Eventually, he broke the news on Instagram with a letter posted on the 15th of September. Paul Annacone did a long interview with Tennis.com to discuss what it was like to work with the maestro. The first thing he said is that, as a coach, he learns more from every player under his care than they learned from him. Bear in mind that Annacone has worked with Tim Henman, Sampras, and of course Roger Federer, and he keeps saying that every experience with every player is new. Coaching, according to him, is one of the most enlightening things anybody can do. You have to believe in what you want to do, but also have an always open mind and harbor the ability to be a sponge for information. And then he says, you have to be able to tell people things in a way they can truly understand. Paul Annacone was Federer's coach between 2010 and 2013. This means he helped the maestro through the most difficult times in his career. He says Pete Sampras was insulated and insular. Roger, by comparison, was a complete extrovert. He was completely out there in the world. Pete would be with whatever guy was taking care of his strength and conditioning, and Annacone would take care of the tennis stuff. He says Pete Sampras was way more singular in his focus than Roger ever was. Roger, according to Annacone, was expansive and, for the last 15 years, the perfect ambassador for tennis. There is so much to talk about, but how many of you remember that epic Wimbledon final against Andy Roddick? Stay with us. That's coming up in a moment. Then, the most memorable moments in Federer's career. Federer's first Grand Slam victory came in the 2003 Wimbledon final. It was also the first time he had such an enormous television audience. The score was knotted at 2 apiece in the first set tiebreaker. Federer's brilliance was suddenly all on display in one single point. He made a spectacular half volley from the baseline, played a couple of ground strokes, and then finished with a textbook forehand straight down the line. In the U.S. Open final against Agassi in 2005, Roger played against the crowd to an extent. This may have been the only time in his career that this was the case. They favored Agassi. Federer unleashed a demonic forehand from deep behind the baseline early in the match. Agassi later said there simply wasn't a safe place on the court to put a ball. Roger's movements, serve, return, and the net game was nothing short of incredible, and his versatility was so powerful that he had at least 5 things he could do better than any other player on the tour. At Roland Garros, Federer played against Juan Martín del Potro in the semifinal in 2009. This was just a few months after his agonizing defeat against Nadal at the Australian Open final. Federer was desperate to get a French title so he could complete his Grand Slam. Nadal got knocked out by Robin Soderling in round 4. And at that point, Federer knew he was in with more than a chance to win in Paris. Del Potro was 6'7", and his ground game was absolutely relentless. Federer, however, had a whole arsenal at his disposal, which he used to great effect. Eventually, he won with a 5-set triumph. In Game 2, Federer curved the ball down the line to win, and the maestro then continued to demolish the surprise finalist, Soderling, and win his only French Open title. What about the 2009 Wimbledon final against Andy Roddick? 1 year after losing to Nadal in 5 fireworks sets at SW19 in what some consider the greatest match ever played, Federer walked onto the court in the Wimbledon final again. The match turned out to be another epic. The first set went Roddick's way, and then he held a solid 6-2 lead in the tiebreaker in the second. Roddick seemed to be in control of the point. He smacked a forehand at Roger's feet. Federer's reply was a casual half-volley backhand winner, followed by winning the tiebreak. In the end, Federer won an astonishing 5th set, 16-14. In the 2011 French Open semifinal, Federer faced off against Novak Djokovic. Federer was coming into the 2011 Roland Garros tournament during his first career slump. He'd come off 4 Grand Slams without a win. Nadal was the talk of the town in Paris, as he had just had a 3 Grand Slam year, and Djokovic had a brilliant start to the year and was truly coming into his own and settling into his game. He'd won 41 consecutive matches, which included the Australian Open. Federer was visibly motivated and single single-minded. He needed only 4 sets to beat Djokovic. In the final set, Federer flicked a backhand down the line, a passing shot that stunned Djokovic and sealed Federer's victory. It was clear how much this victory meant to him and how much he needed it. He got beaten by Nadal in the final, but this was the victory that got him back on track. Remember the 2019 Wimbledon final against Djokovic? Watch to the end to see what we have in store. And there was that match against Djokovic in the US Open semifinal in 2011. 1 year after conceding 2 match points to his rival in the semifinal, Federer was up 2 match points in the same round in New York. It was on his serve this time, and Djokovic came up with a shattering return and saved the match point. On the second match point, Federer was visibly shaken by Djokovic's shot. He bungled a relatively simple forehand into the net. In the rarest moment of outward irritation, Federer said after the match that Djokovic didn't seem that he wanted to win anymore. His mind was already out of the game, as if he got a lucky shot, and there he was. He went on to say Djokovic didn't look like someone who believed in winning anymore. He said he found the match disappointing. In 2017, at the Australian Open final, Federer played Nadal. His career had already been declared unofficially over, and he'd been struggling with lackluster performances and physical ailments in the slams. He came onto the court at the Aussie Open with little fanfare. Nadal was also coming off what was probably the worst period of his career at the time. But boy, did the two put on a show in Melbourne. Nadal had figured out that Federer could be beaten with high balls to his backhand side. This was going to be his formula, but Federer's backhand just didn't buckle. That said, his mighty forehand won him the match in the end. Federer got such a frightening power behind a half volley down the line, and that gave him momentum. He came from a breakdown in the 5th to win the title, and this marked the beginning of the 3rd act of his career. Finally, the Miami Open quarterfinal against Tomas Berdych in 2017. This may not have been the most important moment, tournament, or match for Federer, but there was one shot that was so totally extraordinary, it simply could not be excluded. It was a mid-court high-in-the-air drop shot that had Berdych completely fooled. Also, a match that simply couldn't be excluded was the Djokovic-Wimbledon final in 2019. Federer lost this one, and it almost seems a shame to end on a negative note when talking about such a magnificent career. But this is not the case. The devil is in the detail. You see, Federer was only weeks away from his 38th birthday. Now, 38 is a Methuselah in this sport, and Federer was 1 point away from winning another Grand Slam title. The fact that all of this unfolded against Djokovic couldn't have been comfortable for Federer. He had the match on his own serve. He served conservatively, and Djokovic brushed him away easily. When it was over, Federer admitted to not knowing exactly how to feel about everything. He felt he had disappointed himself by missing such a stunning opportunity. A lot has been said about Roger Federer's career. The man was one of the greatest players ever, a true gentleman, and arguably the best ambassador the game had ever had. And there will be much more to say as the years go by. The hidden gems in the well-remembered games will be dusted off and discussed again. It's just the kind of career Federer had. With that note of nostalgia, we're ending this video. Thanks for staying with us, and please remember to hit like, follow, and subscribe. And keep an eye out for our next contribution. See you in the next one.